In this video, as voted for by you, I will analyse the truth behind Chinese history memes. Let's start with this meme. Virgin Confucian versus the Chad Moorist. Having read the Confucian canon in Chinese, made videos about his life, and also the Mohist canon. Now that is associated with the philosopher Mozi. For some reason it's called Mohism in English. I am therefore in a good position to analyse the truth of both of these sets of assertions. We have Confucius here depicted on the left as the beta, weak male. Historical Confucius lived in around 500 BC, right in the middle of the Warring States period in the state of Liu, and his collected sayings were recorded and preserved for us in the Analects. Firstly, people say that he sits in court all day. Now, the historical Confucius did far more than sit in court each day. He actually tried to reinstate monarchic rule over those who hid behind the curtains in the state of Liu. Confucius was in fact a radically perennialist reformer who looked back on the cultural heroes of China's semi-mythical origins with awe. After the nearly successful attempt at doing this in his later life, his main focus became describing and defining what it was to be good, and this is the focus of the Analects, and also recording great swathes of history in China. Spring and autumn annals. Unfortunately, the accusation of having no practical skills is probably more valid with later generations of Confucians who, having spent most of their lives training for the civil service exam, knew more about quoting Confucian classics than anything else. On the other hand, compared to that lack of practical skills, we have Mozi there. But first articulated the ideas we now call Mohism, was a more, one might say, practical philosopher. It says here he's a master of defensive siege tactics. Yes, that was true. By the way, Mozi around the same time as Confucius, born in 470 BC, so a little bit later. There are entire chapters in the eponymous Mozi dedicated to this subject. Mozi was fundamentally opposed to states taking over each other. About Confucius, wastes money on extravagant funerals. Now, the irony of this is that in many Analects, he in fact advocates specifically against this and emphasises the core importance of genuine emotion. So although later he becomes associated with this is in fact an unfair accusation. Compared to this, we have the Chad Mozi who avoids decadent expenditures. Now this is based on the truth. One could describe him as very Spartan. He didn't like things like music, and as it says there, it says he never listens to music. Yes, that was true. Mozi was not a fan of music, whereas Confucius himself was a fan of music and believed that it could contribute to the cultivation of order. Now, the entirety of human history shows that Confucius is correct here. What else are folk songs but ways of sharing an order? What else is a national anthem? Or even when moderns enjoy so-called pop songs, are they not in a sense sharing some kind of order in listening to these songs in sold-out arena tours? A world without music is somewhat less appealing than even the terrible music that is produced now. Believing close relations deserve more respect than strangers. Now, this comes from a single verse in the Analects. Most of them focus on just describing how it is to be good, but there are a few Analects which talk about protecting your relations. Now, there is probably some truth to this, although respect isn't the most suitable word. Perhaps leeway would be more fitting here. After all, it's an emotion we all feel in dealings with those we see as our family. The qualitative nature of someone we see as our family differs from those who aren't. Confucius is merely articulating this truth of our conscience, a conscience which has served our species well in the long line of history until now. So to depict this as beta seems somewhat strange. As opposed to this is the Chad Moorist here who loves all people equally as all are descendants from heaven. The concept Mozi calls this is Gen-I, that is the ideal that one should extend universal love, Gen-I, to everyone regardless of who they are. Now if this sounds a bit new age hippie-ish to you, this is probably fair. Confucians quote old sayings from the Analects instead of making arguments. Now, in fairness to Confucius, they really were focusing on different questions, whereas Mozi was focused, and Mohism focused more on what to do in government in terms of practicality. Confucius was mainly trying to define a good moral existence, and his stock in trade was example and tradition. At some point, a logical argument for how to be good is nonsense, because one simply needs to follow an example. And there are many of these provided in the Analects, such as the ones I'm showing on the screen now. And of course, as it says here, Mozi makes logical arguments. Well, they're really talking about different things, really. It's a lot easier to make a logical argument about how to make a defensive siege. It believes fate is preordained by heaven. I don't think this is supported by the Confucian canon. The truth here is more inconclusive. Confucius speaks of the will of heaven sometimes in the Analects, but little on how it interacted with the world of man. In some ways, we might very well swap these two roles here, especially when we look at this in terms of history. Confucianism spread during the Han Dynasty. The Han Dynasty founder Liu Bang had several Confucians who influenced him. His progeny instituted the first imperial entrance exams, and their content was focused on Confucian texts, cementing the link between Chinese imperial dynasties and Confucianism for the next 2,000 years. On the other hand, the supposedly practical Mohism associated with Mozi largely died out. Although there is much to be said for Mohism, it played little part in the ideas of great thinkers in Chinese history over the next few millennia. One might say Confucius was the real Chad after all. I haven't even mentioned his legacy in the realms of recorded history, like the Spring and Autumn Annals and the recording of poetry, which he made great contributions to. Therefore, I rate this meme a 2 out of 5 for realism. Join me for the next meme analysis, where we will look at the Virgin Qin versus the Chad Han meme.